our second episode of the season. So welcome back. Time to be in community, time to learn a little something, time to figure out how we showing up in our communities, right? And so I guess I'll give a little introduction to me. My mom told me I didn't go hard enough on introducing myself last time when we did our first episode. So my name is Jasmine. I am a political strategist, a policy wonk, a micro farmer. I've been an activist and organizer, and I am an emerging healer. So that's a little about me. Also, West Daytonian through and through and through. So representing Ohio and West Dayton all day, every day. So as you know, when we come here and we talk about things, we are rooted in a couple of things. So I just want to let you know what our topics that we're talking about today, which is a zero waste future, right? Where we are conserving energy and environment in the state of Ohio. So we have two panelists right now. So that we're going to talk about who are leaders in zero waste and the circular economy and teaching us different things. We have Tyeisha Cole from Green Umbrella, and we have Aharon Ben-Keymah. I hope I'm saying that right, from the UAI. Both of them will have time a little bit later to introduce themselves, talk a lot about their initiatives and the organizations that they either run and or represent, right? But in the meantime, we are just going to do some ground root digging about, again, what is the people who bring us together. So the people who bring us together are the Black Environmental Leaders Association. So shout out to them. Shout out to everybody up in the Cleveland area and all of our members and everybody else who come here and build up a community that is rooted in environmental justice and racial justice and learning what healing looks like for us, by us, right? So what is BEL, which is the acronym for what we stand for? Black Environmental Leaders is an organization that was started in Northern Cleveland to be able to address the intersection of racial, economic, and environmental issues that deeply impact and burden our communities. We are rooted in a space that we call AI squared. What does that mean? That means we advocate, we incubate, and we inform. So through advocacy, we are strong advocates for speaking out against the impacts and the burdens of environmental justice on BIPOC and other marginalized communities. What we mean by incubating is we create safe spaces for multi-generational environmental leaders to come together, to learn, to grow, and to be in community. Because we know that making sure the world is a safe and habitable place is a big job, and it's often a lonely job, especially in a place like Ohio, right? And then lastly, we inform, which is we are a clearinghouse for truthful, contextualized, and multi-dimensional information, data, and education about the complexities of environmental harm and what mitigation, harm reduction, and healing looks like for BIPOC and other marginalized communities, right? So with that being said, what is Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices? So again, we are on our second season, but we are the safe space. We are the communal space for our environmental justice advocates, activists, organizers, leaders, business, and subject experts to come together to better understand and give education and awareness around legislation, around policy, and around the process and abilities that impact us. So we are made aware, so we are educated, and we are able to influence and impact our communities, our state, and the overall nation, right? So last year we took a look at our EJA legislation, which BEL was instrumental in drafting. And EJA is Ohio Jobs and Justice Act, that was pivotal toward making sure that we were an environmentally just state and to make up for many of the gaps that our communities suffer from, right? But this year we are learning about the legislative processes, and we're also learning about what it looks like in the active work that many of our leaders are already doing to make sure that not only are we impacting policy, but we're part of the economic and the social changes that represents making sure that we have a sustainable and a green economy, right? And so today we're going to be talking about zero waste, and we're going to be talking about a circular economy. We'll be learning what that is, what that looks like for our communities, and also the current policy and legislation. And why are we doing this? Because we benefit the most from a circular economy versus linear economies because they rob us of our freedom, of self-determination, of the ability to live in safe and healthy environments, to be healthy, to be safe, and also to make that money because we do live in a capitalistic society, right? So at Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices, You know that we focus on the way of using our stories and our way of life and finding and creating supporting policies that take away the environmental harm that have been unjustly put on us while giving us an opportunity to create a pathway through jobs and other opportunities, including entrepreneurship, right? Where we can be a part of our conversation about healing. Even better, we've already got leaders in the movement, and today we're going to highlight a Tyeisha from the Green Umbrella in Cincinnati and Aharon from the UAI in Ridall in Cleveland. So with that being said, I'm actually going to turn over the introductions to our two panelists today. So thank you and welcome for being here. Aharon, if you wanted to start, and we could go and just learn more about the UAI and Ridall and you in general. So I'm just going to mute myself and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Aharon Ben-Keymah. Nice to see everybody's beautiful faces today. And I am founder of the UAI and farm manager of Ridall Green Partnership. Now, the UAI is an acronym. It stands for Teaching Humanity Excellence Urban Agriculture Initiative. And we are a social enterprise focused on teaching humanity the benefits of holistic health and well-being. So what we focus on is teaching people how to get rid of food deserts and how to become self-sufficient. We build gardens for people. We help manage people's gardens. We restore old gardens back into thriving gardens. We offer holistic products like moringa. We serve farmers markets at our community. We do CSAs and things of that sort. And with those profits from our for-profit component, we end up donating our profits to our nonprofit component where we educate people about healthier ways of eating, healthier lifestyle practices like yoga, aromatherapy, sound therapy, massage therapy, and all of these different alternative therapy practices. So we can begin to eradicate some of these diseases that are predominant in our neighborhoods. So that's a little bit about the UAI and what we do. We are an international youth-based organization. We have connections in Belize, connections in Israel, connections in Ghana, and we plan on establishing connections with people in Kenya so that we can make this an international effort, an international youth effort. We have to connect globally because that's where the real money is at, right? The international business. So we want to expose the youth from these hoods, that international market, so that they can expand their horizons as entrepreneurs as this market expands. So with Ridall Green Partnership, that's where the UAI was created and birthed. We are the youth component of Ridall. Ridall Green Partnership is a 501c3 training facility. It's an acronym as well. It stands for Redeeming Integrity and Determination for All Mankind. And it's an outreach training facility, actually campus, where we have 18 acres of land, where we do a plethora of things from, we have a tree nursery to composting, to a fish farm, to restaurants, to our training program. Is actually something worth coming to see. And what our main focus is getting people to understand the benefits of an urban farm, to get rid of these food deserts. And then not only locally, but nationally and internationally, how urban farming is a essential piece to all the climate issues that are predominant around the world. Because as we know, a lot of places are becoming more urban, and more people getting in these urban areas are seeming to find themselves in the same lifestyle disease conditions, from high levels of stress, diabetes, malnutrition, obesity, and all these different things. So Ridall Green Partnership is an educational facility that teaches people how to do these things, but it all started with composting. So I'll yield the room, and let my powerful sisters talk and introduce herself as well.
Awesome. That was amazing. And I definitely plan to visit. I did not know it was 18 acres. I read a little bit about, but like 18 acres, that's incredible. Also, if you do expand into Kenya, please, in general, just hit me up. I lived there for 2 years, miss it, plan on going back, also plan on doing some work in the country eventually as well. But yeah, no, thank you. So my name is Tyeisha Cole. Thank you for inviting me to the panel. This is my first time officially talking about shell recycling in this capacity. So really excited because most people don't want to hear about oyster shell recycling all the time. But yeah, no, Tyeisha Cole, I started an organization called Closed Loop Initiative Partners. It is a 501c3. Registered it a few years ago. A lot has happened. I was in Connecticut though during the COVID pandemic, and I was finishing my master's. I had a young kid. She's 4 and some change now. I had become passionate about oyster shell recycling by chance, really. So my master's is in environmental policy. My bachelor's is in urban planning. And then I attended a school called the Cincinnati Zoo Academy. Shout out to them. It's a high school inside of the Cincinnati Zoo where you can, generally speaking, most people go to Hughes High School first, but I've known others who have gone to other schools and then transition. But your junior and senior year, you spend on campus at the Cincinnati Zoo, and you are working with zookeepers, horticulture department, crew, which is our vets, commissary to like actually create the food for all of the animals that live on site, and the public, of course. And so you do that for 2 years. And so I was exposed to a little bit of everything, right? Botany, zoology, climate action, blah, blah, blah. And that's like really where I kind of got my start in this world. While I was pregnant, I was like, you know what? I just want to finish my master's. I was working a couple of restaurant jobs just to stack up a little bit of extra money. And at these restaurant jobs in Cincinnati, I noticed there were a ton of oyster shells being thrown away. And for that reason, like that's kind of how I got into that world. But today I work with Green Umbrella as the climate action coordinator, and the organization CLIP is not inactive, but I'm not actively working in it, but I am actively still working in like zero waste planning and education. So yeah. And who else is online? Let's see, my mouse is freezing, but I would like to introduce.
No, it's just us that's going to be talking.
Okay.
Going to be live. Yeah, so we can usher right into your presentation. So what is going to happen is I already have it pulled up, and I'm going to share my screen, and you tell me when to go forward and when to do that. So give me a couple seconds while I do that for us.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Is it starting to load? If so, okay, yeah, awesome. Yep. I was gonna say I can repost it if need be. Technology, right?
And technology has been one for the ages today, let me tell you.
Yeah, it's been a struggle all week, honestly. I think it's the rain, it's springtime, the cords, the wind, all of that, but we'll make it happen.
All righty. We're so ready to go, Ty. I cannot wait to learn more about what you do.
I'm super pumped. Great. So this like deck and presentation, of course, we're mainly focused on workforce development, but I also am really intrigued with how oyster shell recycling alone can teach like any and everyone about like biodiversity protection and all of the connections to the circular economy, just from like going to a restaurant and eating some oysters and being like, what happens next to that shell? So can shells be diverted to support equitable workforce development programs, specifically in Ohio? And really, this is like a replicable thing anywhere. Like it doesn't have to be Ohio, but you know, obviously we're here. And so that's just me. That's just who I am. Like I said, a little bit of background. That's the Zoo Academy. That's Kenya. That is Over the Rhine Community Housing at the bottom. Shout out to them in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then those are the Florida Keys, and that's Washington, D.C. And once again, I place this picture in there because oysters are literally worldwide, and their population is declining. Their reefs are down 85%, unfortunately, due to pollution, climate change, like over harvesting, not putting their shells back into the ocean when we are consuming them constantly. And so I place this picture in there because when I realized this after my graduate degree was complete, every place that I've lived on the planet in different countries around the world has had these same issues. And if we tap into this as a resource, instead of sending it to the landfill, they could be creating jobs literally by just keeping something out of a landfill. And when I started to think about the environmental justice issues behind this, the fact that most people who live close to landfills or live close to toxic things that are just brewing and diseases building up there, like it's mainly people of color. And I started to look at it from that lens, that if we can figure out how to recycle oyster shells in non-coastal cities, my light went out, in non-coastal cities, then this really could create a new workforce development program that didn't exist. And right now with the funding from the Biden administration, we should strike while the iron is hot, definitely. You can go to the next slide. And so why recycle oyster shells? That's a picture of an oyster shell with some baby oysters growing up. They started off as spat. They're probably about the size of a fingernail, and look at them now. They take about 8,000 years to just begin to degrade because they're calcium, right? They literally support over 300 species of plants and animals. Like, that's insane in our oceans worldwide. One oyster can house about 20 spat, and one adult oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day. These are just some of the numbers. There were $219 million. That's the oyster aquaculture sales US market here alone. That's not even globally speaking. And then, like I said, there's an 85% loss due to habitat destruction and stuff like that. So, oh, and I'm sorry, that last one, oyster reefs are a climate adaptation strategy because they do reduce shoreline erosion. They absorb 90% of that energy, those waves that come into contact with them, which means reduce flooding for, low-income communities that may be around that area. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so, yeah, like I said, one adult oyster can filter 50 gallons a day. This was just an experiment done by one of the organizations, but you can see on the tank on the left, that's the dirty, unfiltered water. And 5 hours later, that's what happened with just 20 oysters being there. They used to be able to filter like the Chesapeake Bay in about, I think, 2 or 3 days or so. Now it takes longer because it's less of them there, more pollution, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Chesapeake Bay saved between $3 and $18 million alone just from restoring reefs. Imagine the workforce capacity that went into that, right? Like, and that can exist here. Although we don't have oceans here, we do have a ton of like oyster shells that need to be recycled, and states like Maryland and others are desperately in need of them. So you can go to the next slide. And so this is just a picture to just show across the country. These are the programs that exist across the country, generally speaking, the oyster shell recycling programs that do. But again, as you can see, all the white parts of the country, we eat oysters out here too, but we just don't think about it because we don't live next to the ocean. And when I lived in Connecticut for about 2 years during COVID, it was very apparent. And that's kind of where I got my start at actually recycling oysters and doing research and whatnot. And they were very much more like gung-ho about it because they needed those oysters since we were on the coast, but away from the coast, it's not the same. So yeah, you can see the graphics, but I won't dive into it. Next slide. And then once again, not going to dive too deep, but this is just from NOAA. NOAA was who funded my research project with the University of Connecticut almost 2 years ago. So shout out to NOAA. And yeah, like once again, they are very, very powerful little ecosystem engineers is what we named them. I'm not going to go through this, but I'll make sure everyone has a slide deck at their disposal like later. You can go to the next one. And so once again, they're in very high demand. The state of Maryland, they paid Florida $6.3 million US for 110 tons of oyster shells. And like that blew my mind, right? I was like, 6.3 million for some shells that I was just throwing away in a landfill? What? And yeah, it was really astonishing to me. But I started thinking about that. What if we were creating similar programs in non-coastal states and employing like low-income, BIPOC residents that are desperately looking for jobs? And this isn't, it's kind of common sense. It's not that difficult. It's a matter of logistics planning, transporting the shell, keeping it away from residential areas, because once they cure, you do have to sit them outside for 6 months and they smell bad. They can smell bad, you got to make sure you're not reintroducing new diseases into water. So that's why you have to sit them out, let them dry, let them clean. But once that whole process is taken care of, right? If you could make, I don't need 6 million. I can get let me just get a mill. Come on. So, okay, Nora. Next slide. Sorry, kids home. And so these slides are just mainly pictures. Won't go through all of them, but like these are the species that oysters actually support in our deep blue oceans. Okay, in our deep blue oceans, just.
So just a reminder, we are a family-friendly show around here. So when we got to tend to the family and the loved ones, this is absolutely a safe space. So go ahead, Ty, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I bribed her with 2 new Barbie dolls after this session. So yeah.
No need for apologies. We completely understand.
Yeah. So yeah, the menhaden fish, that's like the world's most important fish. They are involved with lipstick, cookies, probably shouldn't have said that, salad dressing, like butter, fish oil supplements, like a ton of stuff. Look at these species, like literally millions of dollars are supported in our country. That's just the US alone. I mean, you can go to the next slide. And so think about this, because some of these species we consume ourselves if we're not vegan, or even if we are, definitely our restaurants do. A couple of years ago, 968 manatees died due to starvation. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, they started planting millions of oyster shells and oysters and clams because they filter water and they will bring back that biodiversity. And so, yeah, like if we're not supporting them, like ecosystems are falling apart and we're sitting here struggling with like job creation and whatnot. Like, let's connect the dots, right? So you can go to the next slide. And so that's like little me, like getting started in Connecticut for the first time. This was a year and a half ago. We were able to recycle about 9,000 oyster shells, keep them out of the landfill very last minute. This was in partnership with the University of Connecticut, and then Copp's Island Oysters, which are delicious oysters, local family business in Norwalk, Connecticut. Beautiful place. They literally have a commercial scale recycling initiative there, and it's amazing. If you ever get a chance, you should see it. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. And so that's just like, again, what it looked like. Same day, we were able to place these back into the ocean relatively quickly because they literally had just pulled them out for the festival. So like, talk about circular and like closed loop. It came in and went back in. So that was great. Yeah. And you can go to the next slide. Cost savings, once again, we're talking about job creation. This was just a Texas case study. They saved 24,000 just from like recycling their oysters, keeping it out of landfill. 24,000, think about like someone's entry-level salary. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so here, Nora, here's your cookies, babe. Your cookies. I'm still working, sweetie. You're welcome. That's a lot, like 24,000. That was just one case study from one city run restaurant, right? So imagine doing that on a larger scale. Obviously, some states are consuming more than others, Texas, Louisiana, New York, whatnot. But even if we're not sending them back, there are other uses for the shell. So you can go to the next slide. I won't go through it all, but once again, you can save money, create jobs from this, because I want to save time for other speaker too. And again, just some of the species. Some of us eat these, like even if you're not, they are definitely sold at high-end restaurants, at grocery stores. We can get in on this too. You can go to the next slide. And yep, again, the species that are supported. So even though we don't live next to the coast ourselves, oysters affect all of our lives every single day, whether we realize it or not. And I think we should take advantage of that in a good way and let it be used as a teaching mechanism for environmental education, literacy, zero waste, environmental justice, because, landfilling, everything affects us the most. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. There's just a few more pictures, by the way. And so that's just a case study. The Billion Oyster Project in New York, they've been doing this for several years now. They work with at the time, 75 restaurants, probably more now. And the city of New York has literally invested money into that nonprofit organization to do this on a huge scale, work with high schoolers. They have a goal to, I believe, plant like 1 billion oysters in back into the ocean by 2050, I believe. And they're doing a great job. So if you have a chance to check out their site as well, like, please do. Yep, go to the next slide. And that's just like what this looks like. I'm not going to like really go over. I just wanted you to see like the magnitude of what oyster shell recycling can look like. These are jobs, like these are jobs once again. And so again, they do have projects in DC and Pittsburgh as well. But other than that, there aren't really too many like non-coastal programs. Go to the next slide. And yep, these are just pictures. Once again, that's Georgia. I believe the one on the end is New York. I think the one in the middle is also, that one's Maryland. Yep, that one's Maryland. You need the space. You need to make sure it's away from residential because they're going to smell. Give them 6 months at least minimally. Make sure your policy is behind you, blah, blah, blah. But jobs. And I rarely see people of color like in these positions, very rarely. But go ahead and go to the next slide. Yep, just more pictures. You can go to the next slide. And policy, this is like pretty much my last one. Policy changes demand, and that supports advocacy, and that's what creates jobs, or at least creates the environment to create jobs. In North Carolina, they made it illegal to dump oyster shells, period. Whether or not they can actually enforce that 24/7, that's another question. But it does send the message to the public that like this is an important resource that we're trying to hold on to. And instead of the state of North Carolina paying someone else, millions of dollars to ship their shell, let's just do a better job at keeping ours out of the landfill. That's smart. And that's going to create those jobs. Maryland actually created a share recycling tax credit to incentivize like anyone, like literally anyone, to work with restaurants, keep them out of the landfill, and just give them back to those organizations and they'll do the rest of the work. I thought that was fantastic. Connecticut, while I was there, that's what we were working on. We did pass legislation to allow 501c3s to actually be compensated to do this type of work. I had literally just left Connecticut when it had passed, and then came back home to Ohio with the kid and started my position with Green Umbrella to do more circular economy advocacy work, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I would say like incentivizing and disincentivizing to create that policy change, create that working group, et cetera, get the right people in the room. And like, that's how the jobs are created. And then the very last slide, I think, is just my contact information. It was not. You can skip this one, but it just shows like we can just fly through. Oyster shells can be used in a lot of different ways. You can work with artists. You can work, with landscape architects and like literally place them back into the ground for filtration purposes. You can go to the next slide. It's a lot with oysters. You can go to the next one. This just shows like, once again, you can literally break those shells down. And that's an experimental way, but it's absolutely possible. So that's my contact information. Once again, I did this work through my own baby little nonprofit, Closed Loop Initiative Partners. But I am now with Green Umbrella. It is not inactive, but I'm not active with it because I'm doing more work on a regional scale now. But definitely I'm here to answer any questions about shell recycling camp. I love it. So thank you for that time. And I hope that inspired some people.
Thank you, Tyeisha. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Like, it was so beautiful. And it was amazing because I remember watching the PBS series about the New York Harbor's initiative to get to 1 billion.
Yeah.
And the young high school students. And I was really, really inspired. So to know that we have someone in Cincinnati who's doing that work and has walked us through the various ways that we could use oyster shell recycling, upcycling, reusing to be able to do different things. So what Aharon talked about in his intro with what he does with the UAI and with Red All Green Initiatives, right? And what Ty talks about with her own nonprofit and with Green Umbrella is something that we call a circular economy, right? So what is a circular economy? Because we have to talk about those things in order to figure out what that means. So I'm getting back to my notes, y'all, because listen, this technology life has been hard today. And for some reason, it won't let me X out of the PowerPoint so I can get back to my notes. Okay, we are back with my notes. So we're just going to talk about a little about what is a circular economy and why a circular economy is so important before we get into our questions for the evening. So according to the UN, a circular economy is a way to keep things, materials, products, services in use and rotation for as long as possible. This is a restorative and a regenerative practice by design. So that means it's intentional. And I don't know if y'all know anything about me, but I love living a life full of intention, from the business model economically, but also industrially to how the products are designed and practically to make sure that we can use them, we can reuse them, and they can be repaired in a way to make sure that they don't make it to waste or pollution, and to make sure that they stay in our economy for as long as possible. And this process also makes a way for us to eliminate waste through producing superior materials, products, and business models that keep in mind the entire lifespan of a product from raw material all the way to how it will be air quote discarded. Because nature don't really waste nothing, right? So I believe we should follow after nature and not do that, right? And so, according to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, there are three types of a circular economy. There is the need to eliminate waste and pollution. Again, I just said that in nature, we are meant to mimic nature. We are meant to live in accompaniment and compliance with nature, not against it. Nature doesn't actually have waste. Waste is a human invention, right? So, this human invention is by design that most things that we design are meant to be air quote disposable for our convenience. But this convenience leads to millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds of waste a year globally and also within the state of Ohio, right? But also, we need to think about the impact that the greenhouse emissions takes when we are consistently extracting from the earth, which is a finite resource, even though us, our ancestors, and all of our ways of knowing have been on this one earth, and it continues to find ways to replenish itself in spite of what we are doing. That replenishment is slowing down, right? And so we have to recognize that earth has finite resources, and the way that we do that is making sure that we eliminate the human construct of waste and we eliminate the pollution, particularly the greenhouse gases and the emissions that comes from the production of the raw materials, the transportation of those raw materials to become products, those products into storefronts. And then once we have those products into storefronts, also when it goes into the landfill or incineration. The way that we combat that is by the second principle of circular economy, which is to circulate the products and materials at their highest value. So that means from the business model, from the conception of this product, how we engage with the earth and the raw material, it is with the consistent information that it will either go through a biological or a technical process to make sure that it either stays in use for as long as possible. We have processes for sharing the stuff once we're done with it. And what I mean stuff is whatever air quote waste that we have at the end of using a product. We have the ability to repair them and keep them in circulation for as long as possible. And lastly, the ability to regenerate nature. One of the things we have to be able to do while maintaining a circular economy or transitioning from a linear economy to a circular economy is making sure that we are doing the things that Aharon and Tyeisha talked about, which is making sure we are giving natural biological resources that have the ability to go to a decomposition process back to the earth, because the earth's been billions of years creating a habitable process to make sure that nothing is wasted. We also have to make space and areas, like we talked about with the policy when Ty was giving her oyster shell presentation, where we allow this natural decomposition process to be able to take place in order to replenish our soil. And I don't know if y'all know, but we in a whole soil crisis right now. So neither here nor there. These is what just a little bit about what a circular economy means. So why is a circular economy important, and why is it important for our communities? A circular economy is vital to slowing climate change, and when adapted by government and businesses, it is an important recognition to the unethical and unequal burden that we in underserved communities have suffered with the negative environmental, health, and social impacts of being ignored, especially with the prominent location of landfills and manufacturers near BIPOC and low-income communities. So this is a vehicle for social justice and social change, as seen by Tyeisha's presentation. We are the future of these efforts. Like, make no mistake about that. The future for the efforts to fight climate change, pollution change, and the human invention of waste are being led by Black people, and always have been. It is a part of our historical lens when we look at our historical and communal lens for how we engage and interact with the earth, right? And so a circular economy is really at the heart of what environmental justice means, because it provides a real plan to heal the earth and create sustainability that is focused actually on the people and society and the earth itself. This is also a transitional piece that moves us from linear, populated, singular use economy toward an economy that is completely green and runs off renewable things. And again, the best thing about it is we are already leaders in this movement, as seen by the little bit that we've heard from Aharon. We'll hear more from him, but also the presentation that we heard from Tyeisha. And so even if we don't call ourselves people who participate in zero waste, or we use words like zero waste and singular economy, it shows up in our actions and our desire to continue, no matter what we've been through, to self-determine, heal ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities from the health, the economic, and the societal implications of racial and environmental oppression that has led to us being leaders in this space as we continue to figure out what the answers look like for us to the problems that we have been faced up against, right? This is also the future of business, jobs, entrepreneurship, and it puts us at the heart of what that means, right? And so now we are going to transition into the questions, right? And our first question is geared toward Aharon, right? And so with this being said, tell us a little more about the UAI, tell us more about Riddoch Green Partnerships in the Cleveland areas, and tell us how your work and your initiatives have impacted your community.
Okay, before it's a lot being thrown right now. Hold on, y'all some powerful sisters. Let me just say that right now. The work that y'all doing is phenomenal. The way y'all articulating yourselves is phenomenal. And I'm inspired right now. And I really love to just see people looking like me doing the work and then speaking about it intelligently. You know, that goes and breaks the stigma of what they saying about us. Upcycling, Tyeisha, I love that. The upcycling of the shells, you know, when they was making the vase and stuff like that right there, I like that. So yeah, it really is. I like that. So the UAI, like I said before, we're a social enterprise focused about creating really circular economies, how we can not necessarily just from food waste, but the business structure. How do we circulate the dollar in our community and close the loop of how that dollar, you know, circulates our community from all the way from business, from agriculture, from design to architecture, to marketing, to all the different businesses that can be created. How do we create another Black Wall Street in a sense? That's one thing that I educate the youth on a lot about, is how to create that type of economy. And with Riddoch Green Partnership, to go a little bit into the history, Riddoch actually started in a place where it was a landfill. Ironically, it was called the Forgotten Triangle, and it was dead bodies were dropped off down here. Cars were being burned. There was a lot of homelessness, sex trafficking, all these different things. And when we got there, the land was contaminated because the houses that were there before that were demoed had lead in their paint, and that paint got into the soil and contaminated the soil. So we had to remediate that soil so that we can grow healthier crops. And that's when we started composting. So that's one thing that we take pride in at Riddoch Green Partnership, is composting. And when we went to DC, I was talking to the senator about, you know, the benefits of composting. And that was that when you compost, you not only get rid of certain waste that go to the landfill that could be recycled, but you also improve the quality of foods within community, thus changing the mentality of the people so that they take more pride in their environment overall. That's another circular economy, you know, just closing these loops and changing our minds, like you said, from the destructive to the regenerative. mentality, meaning that we want to leave the earth better than we found it. So these are things that we take pride in, and I emphasized, like you said, we're in a soil crisis. I just had a tour today of 50 students at Green Academy. It came to Ridall, and I said, the soil is the foundation in which we must go to really solve all of the problems that are caused in the world. If we don't fix the soil, everything else won't be solved. We got to go back down to the foundation, and once you get to the foundation, you're able to see the fundamental keys that you need to kind of fix all of these other issues. It's kind of, you have to be rooted in something to see how you can go far ahead to basically prosper. And that's one thing I want the youth to understand, that when you take the food that you would normally throw away into the garbage can and it goes to a landfill, all these greenhouse gases are put into the air. And when they're put into the air, these are the things that are causing these climate changes in our environment. It was just like 100 degrees in our hoop house in the middle of February. It's never been like that. But these are the effects. And just in, it was the 25th of December, it was one of the coldest days in Cleveland. We had like -6 degrees weather in our hoop house, and then the climate changed. So these practices have to change so we can start fixing these environmental issues. And it's a holistic approach that we must take to solving these issues. It's as simple as cleaning the water and fixing the soil in which we come from. So I think you're going to ask some more questions, but I just want to, that's just a little bit, it's a lot that I can talk about, and I could talk here for hours about these things, but these are some of the key components that our organizations are rooted in. Ridall being the soil, and educating people that we must become one with it again. And the UAI emphasizing group economics and creating sustainable supply food chains where our dollars circulate in our community so we can solve the issues that are predominant in them.
It could have been said better, right? Go ahead, Ty, because I was like, no words, no crumbs have been left on the table.
I was in church for a minute. Definitely. Man, no, I am so glad I'm here. Like, despite, working from home with the kid, trying to hide out, but like, this is feeding my soul. And I hope it's feeding a lot of other souls too. Because when I realized, like, oh man, you're literally throwing money in the trash. Like, I'm coming nowhere. Like if you are an unemployed person and you are struggling, with like, I'm gonna let y'all talk for a second. Yeah, I got to get my baby off the potty, but I'm loving it. I'll be right back.
Take care of family. That's a part of a secular economy too. Not forgetting what we got to do when we take care of the very humans in our lives.
That's right. Come on.
See, Aharon, listen. The first question that we had, I was dying because, I was sitting behind you when you were talking to Senator Brown and his aide, and you were saying all these things. And that first question popped in my head then in Celeste. And I was like, he got to be on the show. He got to be on the show. We don't even care. We don't care what we got to do to get Aharon on the show, because you had made such a beautiful connection between what it meant to take something that we don't even think about, which was that the 18 acres of Ridall Green Initiatives was started on a landfill where literal bodies, human beings, where souls inhabit their bodies, was dropped off in a disgraceful way. And then years later, you've turned these 18 acres into a place that is full of regeneration and full of life, while also feeding the community and changing the community outlook about what health looks like, what communalism, what working together looks like. And I love that. And so with that being said, with Ty going on to take care of the baby, which I also understand, there's a soil health crisis in Ohio, in the world. And so, as you know, what we just talked about, one of the tenets of a circular economy is the regeneration of nature, especially in our farming practices, right? Because we know that when we have soil practices that really allows us to use and promote biodiversity and nourish the soil and diminish waste, then it really helps us mitigate the soil crisis, because we need soil to grow healthy foods to be able to eat. So what are some of those business practices that you're open to discussing look like for you at the UAI particularly when it comes to like educating the youth. Like, what are some of those business practices that you're passing on? The reason why I ask this question is because Jay talk about the things that you teach her all the time. So I just want to throw that out there.
So one thing that we're teaching is how to, like we said, close that loop of the waste. So biochar is something that we're interested in looking into and expanding within our communities. And it's a closed loop system where you basically use wood chips, you heat them up in a pyrolysis machine, which is like a chimney or fireplace. And what you use is the heat is being released into the air. You use that heat that's being released into the air and you push it into a tube that water's in. Okay. That's heating up the water. That hot water is then going to be pushed into a radiator that's going to turn the water into heat. And then we're going to heat our hoop houses in the wintertime. Now, the wood chips that we were talking about in the beginning, that is our actual product that we want. And that is the biochar. After it is heated to a maximum of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, it becomes a carbon-like substance. And then that is an extreme, immense amount of carbon that is good for the soil that you can have microbes go into that can be preserved for literally hundreds, even thousands of years. Okay. So when we talk about this carbon that's being released into the air from what? Conventional farming, monoculture, growing one crop, extracting all these minerals out. And then once you get a harvest, you have to then till that land to add fertilizers and nutrients back into the soil. This is a part of the desertification process, right? While soils are becoming dry, that carbon is released into the air and it stays up there. And this is where all of these climate effects are coming from. So back to the biochar preserving, being that strong form of carbon, it sequesters carbon from the air, meaning that it draws down that carbon from the air into the biochar and it preserves it for hundreds of thousands of years. Jasmine, like you said, our mentality has transitioned into being wasteful, but nature has always been replenishing itself. And that's one thing that this process is educating us about. We're just doing what nature does. We're just speeding up the process with the pyrolysis machine. The pyrolysis machine is a machine that is used to heat up the wood chips. And the waste would be when you go and you're driving and you're looking at these industrial cities, all that gas that's being released, instead of us releasing it into the air, we're turning into heat. That's a recircular economy. That's a closed loop. That's zero waste. This is a similar methodology that we do at Red All Green Partnership is with the fish, the aquaponics tank, a symbiotic relationship with fish and plants. The fish poop is used as fertilizer for the plants. The plants transfer those nitrates into nitrites, and then it goes into clean water down so that the plants don't live in filthy water, decreasing the mercury content in the fish and growing healthy plants for people to eat. Closed loop system. So these are just a few of the practices, but in the UAI, our goal is to constantly innovate these methods that we're talking about so that we can remediate and regenerate the soils quicker and quicker. We believe that if you have a healthy soil, you'll have a healthy plant. And if you have a healthy plant, you'll have a healthy person. So that's a few of the practices that we practice here and we educate the youth on.
That's what we needed to hear. We need to hear practical ways that we can participate in a circular economy. We need to know that we are already doing it and we are predispositioned due to our history and the relationships that we have had with the earth to be able to do that. And with that being said, we're going to slightly pivot just a little bit back to Ty, right? So you work at Green Umbrella, which is a regional alliance that focuses on sustainability in Southwest Ohio and portions of Indiana and Kentucky. But what are the specific ways that we here in Ohio can fight to transition to a circular economy that nourishes and heals our community, the BIPOC community, the Black community, right? Can you just tell us a little bit about what that looks like and like maybe some of the work or initiatives that you might be leading at Green Umbrella to make sure that happens?
Yeah, definitely. And like speaking on biochar, like Aharon, that's amazing. I recently learned about biochar just a few years ago, and I was like, this stuff just keeps blowing my mind. So
Yes, yes.
must like come visit you guys like ASAP. When it's warm though, we're almost there. Um, yeah. So like at Green Umbrella, I want to say shout out to the Food Council Policy and CommEN Orchard. Those are two of our programs in-house. CommEN Orchard, they literally go to, different parcels like around the city or the county if we want, our 10 county region if we want. And they literally teach people how to create orchards on vacant sites. They also just started a composting program recently in Camp Washington, which is a low-income BIPOC community that's like not that far from where I grew up in. And so they're composting on site, which is really amazing to see in an urban context. It's kind of rare and it shouldn't be, but it is. And so people are getting involved and actually starting to learn the benefits of like, circular economy, keeping soil close to home, growing food in your backyard and feeding our children at our local schools with that, right? And then the Food Council Policy, like once again, shout out to them. These programs like work in tandem sometimes, but individually oftentimes, and they're doing great work as well. So like all of this, it's really been a blessing to hear and have my brain jogged on like, what else can we be doing? I would say like definitely making sure you're following up with like your local office politics, anyone that's in like an office of environmental sustainability or your economic development offices, because if we can help the people who are creating policy see the benefits and the business model behind supporting a circular economy, then it won't be such an uphill battle to say like, hey, we need funding support or we need you to change the policy. And fortunately right now, a lot of sustainability plans are being produced. Green Umbrella just finished or we're wrapping up like supporting the City of Cincinnati Office of Environmental Sustainability to produce the new Green Cincinnati plan that's going to be released on April. We're going to say Earth Day. We'll just say Earth Day for now. And like a lot of planning and community listening sessions went into that for 8 different topics, but zero waste was definitely one of them. And I would say like in your own local city, just start Googling like zero waste organizations in your city and go from there, because like I'm in Cinci, you guys are in Cleveland, and it's so much going on. But collaboration, I would say really is like where it's at. If we can figure out how to bring our minds together and form those working groups that affect statewide policy, that will like really start to move the needle, because trying to fight this at a local level, sometimes it's really slow. And we can create the case studies and like have amazing case studies like yours, 18 acres is amazing. And we need to like be measuring the results of that work so that when we go to politicians and research analysts and anyone working in like environmental offices, we can say, this is a case study. Here are the metrics. Here's the data. They have captured this much carbon. It clearly works. Now, in order for us to replicate this, we're going to have to change the policy so that people can compost on their property, so that people can grow food on their backyard, so that they can xeriscape or rewild, 10 vacant acres. I mean, that's crazy that like bodies and stuff, you had to like really transform that land to make it usable again. But a lot of land is just sitting here vacant, unused, collecting litter. Like I've got a story for days, but like another time. But yeah. In a nutshell, I hope I answered the question.
No, you answered it beautifully. And I said the same thing when I saw Aharon in DC. I was just like, now that it's getting warm, I'll visit Ridolph. But listen, these bones can't take that Cleveland stuff. Like it just can't do it.
Come on, we ready.
Cleveland too. It's like the coldest up there.
I need some of that soil because I'm starting my veggies this year. So it's just not my herbs and my flowers. I'm starting my veggies this year. So with that being said, Ty, and then I want Aharon for you to speak about your experience of what it means to advocate as an urban farmer in DC and what that looked like. But before we get to that, Ty, I just want you to come off mute and really say, in addition to what we already talked about, get in touch with local people. right? Local people who hold office to really be able to move the mark around what environmental justice or a circular economy looks like at the local level. What other ways or what policy and metric systems can we do to influence or push that forward, right? Like, is it reaching out to people on our agricultural committee, or if we have a natural resources committee in our state houses and different things like that? What does that look like at a state and a national level?
Yes, and kiddo. Yep, I would say like definitely working in cohesion, like collaborating with multiple types of organizations. I kind of wear a couple of hats right now. I am chairing the Cincinnati NAACP Environmental Climate and Justice Committee. And then I have to keep my duties sort of separate, even though it's the same world. We're all like working in the environment, but like one's a C4, one's a C3, right? So I would say like tapping into those local organizations that are already working in the environmental justice space. A lot of the times, like prior to Biden dropping all of this money in our laps, like, recently with the administration, it is an uphill thing to talk to people about like why we should be recycling. But now that there is like a proven way to access millions of dollars of funding, it's like, hey guys, if you're already working in EJ and BIPOC, like advocacy in any type of way, people are grabbing this money and doing really cool things. I've found companies that are literally recycling. Hey, North, you got to stop recycling avocado pits and like turning it into juice. It's like a company now. I'll send y'all the link if y'all want. But like literally, you can recycle like pretty much anything. And since it's an EJ issue, I would say anytime you're considering like recycling anything, I'm talking about shoes, especially textiles. Textiles are huge, right? But like food composting, textiles, just so many things. Plastics. There's a company in Cincinnati now called Precious Plastic, and they are an international affiliate. Check them out, amazing organization. But they're literally upcycling like plastic that we typically are, seeing in our oceans. I think there's a stat like Americans probably have about a credit card of plastic in our system per year, something like that. It's a nasty stat. There's a stat that it is literally raining plastic across the country, and most of our water is contaminated with microplastic. A lot of our fish, of course. So this is when we start to make those connections, and we can convince people like about like the many connections of why we should be doing this and the business like behind it, like how can you benefit? Really, I believe like creating those strong incentives to move towards that. And also, a lot of people aren't with me on this sometimes, but like creating those strong disincentives to like, if you are not recycling, if you are not composting, I know there has to be a setup for that, but like if your city sets it up and you're not doing it, you will be penalized. You will have to pay extra, whatever, because at the end of the day, I am tired of like people who look like me having to breathe, less cleaner air, drink dirtier water, et cetera, because we just didn't want to take the time to keep something out of landfill, or at least try. Like there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be learning curves, but like you got to try, So, but fortunately though, we're in an environment right now where there is money for this. 10 years ago, it was way harder. So, we're living in good times right now for this work, I would say.
Thank you so much. And Aharon, please tell us about what it was like to do the work that you do and then be able to tell your experiences to policymakers such as Shontel Brown and such as Senator Brown.
Can you say the first part of that question again?
Yeah, so the policy work that Ty talked about, you've actually been doing a couple of weeks ago when we were in DC. So I just wanted to have you share a little bit about what your experiences were meeting with Representative Shontel Brown and Senator Sherrod Brown, and really advocated for our way of life up in these streets.
Right. Well, I think it was very powerful for us to go up and be able to showcase the work that we're doing. Because one thing we realized that Celeste had informed us was that they were talking about Riddall a lot, and they didn't even know or met us, So when they seen us, they were really inspired to see like, oh, wow, these are guys that they're Black people, So it was really inspiring for us to go and not only advocate for ourselves, but like my cousin Tim said, open up the doors so other farmers voices could be heard. use our platform so that you could, pitch from a mountaintop in a sense. And I think that was good because it showed the senator that we all have individual messages, but it's a collective ask. We all need the same thing in a sense, maybe on different levels, but we all need the same thing. And it was very inspiring because I felt that everybody was very vulnerable and open and transparent. And I think that the message was received. And now that, like Tyeisha was saying, the rewards and the funds are there. And we've demonstrated our unity. And I think that was one of the greatest pieces of it all.
Thank you for that. And I was also in those rooms, and like the thing that I like the most about being in that room is there were people like Aharon who were doing the work and also able to talk about the sociological and the societal and the health implications of that. Then you had me in the background, like, where the money? Where the earmarks at? Because you got to have a multi-tier fight when we're talking about how do we do those things. So with that being said, we are at 7:10, and this is the time that we're going to close out. We won't have time to ask the last question, but the last question for us to be able to ponder, and maybe we can answer it in like our Facebook and different other places where we can put it in the comment that I just want us to ponder, is what is it like to teach from a values-based perspective? Both Tyeisha and Aharon teach from a place of value, from a place of lived experience, and from a place of deep and intimate understanding that they do not want to keep this information to themselves about how we can transform and heal ourselves from a health perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a mental, I would say a spiritual perspective too, y'all, like hear me out, right? And so this is what I want us to end on, is that when we are participating in a circular economy, we are really not only doing the work for making sure that we are participating in the future at a policy and an economic level that influences our government, influences our way of life, but it also puts us in the top tier of what self-determination looks like, which for many of us is the reality that we've been robbed of what self-determination looks like. So I implore most of us who are listening right now to learn more about what zero waste looks like, learn more about a circular economy, because I bet with you being an environmentalist, with you being an environmental advocate, with you being a philanthropist, with you being an urban farmer or a gardener, you already fit the archetype of what those things are and are living it through your daily lived experiences, right? And so these are the things that when we introduce these words that people have come up with in academia or ivory towers, I need everybody to understand that we actually been living this life for a long time. Like we're just picking up what our grandparents left behind when they had gardens back in the day, when they were in the South, when they were doing things to supplement our diet. Now we're doing that on a larger scale and in urban areas. So we're really picking up where we left off, right? We're really adding another chapter to a very long history and a very long story of us practicing what sustainability and what zero waste looks like. Don't let none of these new tag words fool you. Don't let none of this new legislation fool you. Don't let none of this new movement work fool you. You've been here, you've been a part of it. Now stand 10 toes down and then figure out what that looks like in 2023. And that's why we are here at Ohio Voices, Informing Energy Choices, to remind you of who you really are and what that looks like in 2023 and how we can use our voice, our words, and the way we spend our daily lives, like Aharon at the UAI and at Red Out Grid Initiative, and like Tyeisha, I forgot your nonprofit girl, but at the Green Umbrella, to be able to do this work and see yourselves in the work. So I'm gonna step off my soapbox now. And for our panelists, if you have any closing words that you would like to say, this would be beautiful. A beautiful time to do it.
I just want to make sure we get, like, if it's possible for us to all get on camera to do a little screenshot. This is a really special day for me to talk to like Black folks about oyster shell recycling, and like all of you guys are such an inspiration. This is the highlight of my year, because I've never got to do that before. So yeah, no, thank you for inviting me as well, and like let's keep up the good fight, right?
I would like to do that and take a picture. This is a milestone for me as well. It's my first.
Right?
Yeah. So let's lock this in. And
Matter of fact, let me get on my desk. It'll look better, but yeah.
Well, get in your position and get your lighting right, because right after we get off live, we will be behind the scenes and we can take that picture definitely then, right? And
Yes,
then two,
I wanted to just say my last closing remarks are like you were saying, Jasmine. We're destroyed for a lack of knowledge in our communities, and not only are we destroyed like knowledge isn't there, but we reject the knowledge as when it does come. And we know access to the proper knowledge and the things that we're talking about is the beginning to change our thoughts, transform our environment, and understand our purpose. And that's one thing I wanted to take away and give everybody is that when you do tap into this, you will understand that this has been generational and this is nothing new. So thank you for that. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.
thank you. You don't need the opportunity. You've been taking up the space. We just wanted to tell everybody what you've been doing. And with that being said, where can people follow you, Aharon, for your work? How can they get in contact with you? What's your social?
My social media hashtag is ahk.abk. That's my personal Instagram. My business Instagram is at THEUAI_. And you can follow Red All Green Partnership at Red All Green Partnership. You'll find our addresses, our volunteer opportunities, and our lifestyle practices all on those websites. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ty, if you want to come off and let us know, I know we already have your email and different things, but if you have socials that you would like to previous to, so other people can follow you and your work and everything, because you're awesome.
Oh yeah. I think my personal handle is Tyeisha Imani. I'm not the best with social media, actually, but definitely follow Green Umbrella. Cinci, I believe the handle is Green Umbrella on Instagram. Hold on. Let me just make sure. Green Umbrella Cinci. So CINCY. Check them out. Sorry. So please check out the IG and our website. That's where you can also learn about the Regional Climate Collaborative that is also producing a playbook that will have zero waste circular economy stuff on there as well. I'm going to go off camera, but please check us out.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much, Aharon, for putting more stuff in your chat. We'll make sure that they end up in the comment section for people to reach out to you also. And with that being said, thank you for being with us tonight and being in community and learning about what zero waste and circular economies look like. Again, my name is Jasmine Henderson. I was your guide tonight. And this is Ohio Voices Informing Energy Choices, brought to you by Black environmental leaders and CommEN strategies. With that being said, thank you so much for being in community and good night, y'all.